Good morning, listeners. Today we're diving into a piece by Maureen Dowd that tells us a lot about President Trump's recent speech in the East Room. Dowd opens with a kind of poetic stamp Cosat, if you command prime time, you've got to have something prime to say. Trump didn't, and she's right. The 4-minute address felt more like a wallflower than the dramatic event it was expected to be. The president rattled off a series of complaints that the 2020 election was stolen, that his administration had been compromised by vulnerabilities, yet he provided no new proof. His tone was a mix of frustration and desperation, and his words were more thermal than tactical. The article highlights that Trump's statement on China's threat to U.S. elections was oddly muted by his own praise for Xi Jinping, whom he calls a friend and a great leader. What Dowd calls a contradiction reflects a broader pattern. Trump claims to protect American democracy, but his actions, from the immigration hardline stances to his suggestion of jail time for election officials, show a willingness to undermine the very institutions he purports to defend. Dowd argues that the president has taken the presidency and turned it into a personal theater. She invokes a metaphor, Loti, high chair, to portray a leader who is more concerned with image than substance. A prime example is the mention of former Deputy Speaker Pete Hegseth's decision to ignore calling Trump Loti even when Hegseth proposes a pseudo-biologic boost for senior warfighters. Their inertia, according to Dowd, only signals a lack of action. The article also cites Peter Baker of The Times, who points out that Trump appears intently building a speculative narrative to justify future direct interference in election results. Markwayne Mullin, appointed by Trump as the new Homeland Security Secretary, reinforced this narrative on Friday by threatening local election officials with jail time for defying the administration's directives. This shows a potential collusion between policy and the president's desire for a narrative that can alter the outcomes of future ballots. And don't forget, the obsession is a theme that runs through Dowd's narrative. She draws an Ahab-style comparison, noting that Trump's fixation on the 2020 loss has lasted roughly 6 years. Maggie Haberman back 5 years ago noted that Trump once said he expected his 2021 reinstatement by August, an impossible expectation that underscores his stubbornness. Clawing his way up to this moment, Dowd doesn't hold stones back. She points out Trump's claim that he is Christian and the contradictory statement that he somewhat mocks the sanctity of life. Even a hint of hypocrisy when the president, while citing his religious beliefs, outright ignores ICE victims when painting them in a cavalier tone. All these details add up to a portrait of a president who sometimes appears low-T in high chair. He projects a current of nonsense in an attempt to clamor, but it is an ersatz superluminensius by the aura of Islamist policy. The political dynamics in Washington have no sign of an organized effort to embolden or correct that speech, no spark from Republicans either. It hurts to hear the line that suggests an inky interplay between the left and right factions on Capitol Hill. The lack of visible flurry or strategy signals a hope from lawmakers that Trump will move on, because the current directions are a dead end. Dowd concludes by reminding that while the president is throwing out rhetoric, the denouement is that no endgame has been stitched together. That represents the quiet side of conviction, that it can keep fueling narrative, but also means none of the lawmakers are willing to stand up against it. Thanks for joining us. Tune in next week for another deep dive into the latest political dissecting. Until then, I'm your Closures.